it was like they weren't police officers, because it was basically just two men that just came into my house and took my dad without saying or explaining themselves at all.
These kids are highly at risk.
Do you have any kids? Can you call a neighbor or a family member?
You know, I don't want these kids coming home to an empty house.
It's not really a good idea to transport it in the back of the patrol car. We're gonna have to call Children Welfare Services out here.
You don't have to be worried about her, okay? It's gonna be okay. I'm gonna hang out here with you until your aunt gets here.
Okay. Okay.
I think in the past, we've been in traditional, old school type law enforcement. We come in, we take the bad guys to jail, we leave. The don't ask, don't tell kind of thing of before, where we would just go in, don't ask any questions, you're being arrested for such and such, go to jail. And, you know, if we would close the door behind ourselves to make sure nobody broke in, that was a plus.
And oftentimes officers, when they go into homes, they see the kids, they may be even sympathetic to the kids, but they're not quite sure what to do about the kids.
The reason that law enforcement needs to buy into protecting children when parents are arrested is because it's our responsibility. It's not just children's services, child social workers, it's law enforcement's job too.
I think what we're trying to accomplish is to have some sort of protocol where officers don't have to guess as what, you know, to do next, that they can follow certain procedures in certain situations to protect themselves, and also to do what's best for the children.
Say you have kids. Do you want some officer to just release your kid to another 15-year-old if you happen not to be home? No, you want to make sure that they're safe. That's what our job is to do.
My experience with working with police officers is that they overwhelmingly want to do the right thing. And they have time constraints and the constraints of the emergency scenarios that they're working in. And they're often very troubled by the things that they're maybe leaving behind. So this protocol gives them an opportunity to tie up some of those loose ends with children that I know really matters to them.
In the back of their mind, when they're making an arrest and they see the kids there, they must realize these kids are highly at risk. And I'm sure that they want to do the right thing and make sure they're well taken care of. And having an arrangement with social welfare that allows them to call the social worker to make sure the kids are placed in a safe place must make them feel terrific.
We should have been doing this a long time ago. There's too many kids been hurt, injured, or killed because we didn't make sure that they were protected. We're taking their parents to jail. We have to do something about their dependent children. They don't have the means to do it. And that means we have to step in and make sure they're safe.
You know, for all I knew, he would never come back. And, you know, being the dramatic little child I was, that's exactly what I thought. I thought he would never come back. And with no one to tell me otherwise, that was the truth. He was never going to come back.
When a parent or guardian is arrested, their children are exposed to emotional trauma and temporary child care issues. I'm Mark Bailey, and I'll be your guide through this telecourse as we address these issues. This training is mandated by Penal Code Section 833.2, which recognizes the need for law enforcement to work together with child welfare services to provide a better way of dealing with minor children at the time of a parental arrest. The guidelines are outlined in Section 13517.7. This telecourse is designed as a guide. It's recommended that each county or local agency work with their respective Child Welfare Services Department to develop a comprehensive plan with the best policies and procedures for their respective community. This is not meant for children that are victims of child abuse. It's for children who are caught in the middle when parents are arrested. The key areas that we'll cover include the emotional trauma of a parental arrest and its effect on children, best practices and procedures for arrest and booking, including making additional phone calls to ensure safe child care, the use of county child welfare services to assist with the placement of children when a parent is unable to arrange suitable care, temporary supervision of children for safety and well-being, examples of emerging law enforcement agency procedures, and the benefits from the partnership between law enforcement and child welfare services.
This mandate is common sense, and it's long overdue. Sometimes in this business, we have to be nudged into doing things.
And what this mandate is intended to do, I think, is drop that different lens in the camera and say, can you look at it from this angle and say, possibly, are there kids in the household? Is there a car seat in a car that with no kid that you should be asking about? Where's the kid that belongs to the car seat? And this mandate or this law is intended to have agencies, law enforcement agencies, as well as social agencies, work together. It's kind of a push saying, if we're here for the kids, both those entities need to work together in order to make sure that these kids are being taken care of.
And so one of the reasons we really felt a mandate was necessary was to institutionalize the idea that there need to be thought through policies and procedures for law enforcement officers to follow when they find they're dealing with kids at a very difficult, tense time. It's not something that we think law enforcement should have to figure out on the spot over and over again.
But I think what you'll get out of this is a better informed, a better trained law enforcement officer who can make much more informed decisions in the field about what to do with children. They won't be stressed out about what to do with a child.
I think it's really analogous to the sea change that we've seen around domestic violence. 20 years ago, I don't think there was such a thing as domestic violence. You beat up your girlfriend. But now police are trained in domestic violence and they know what's expected of them. And that was another thing I heard from police officers at convenings and things that I've spoken at. We just want to know what's expected of us. We want to know what our mandate is so we can fulfill it. So I'm really hopeful that as we begin to take the state mandate and develop some local protocols, that will become clearer, just as it has around domestic violence.
One of the things that we in law enforcement have to realize that making an arrest for us is very routine. It's something that most of us do on a daily basis in a uniform patrol function. However, this could easily be the worst day in this child's life.
And, I didn't know much about police officers at all. And you just have this idea that they're supposed to protect and, arrest the bad guys. Really, no matter what your parent does, if it's your parent, it's hard to see them as the bad guy. But it was scary. It was like they weren't police officers because it was basically just two men that just came into my house and took my dad without saying or explaining themselves at all.
When parents are arrested, the children are often left without anything. They're shuffled off to relatives, neighbors. Nobody explains to them what's going on. Their parents may be back in 24 hours and they may not be back for 24 years.
In this segment, our subject matter experts will discuss the emotional impact a parental arrest has on children. Our topics cover: the parental arrest is traumatic. It has long-term effects on children. There is a danger of losing track of children during an arrest. And a positive law enforcement contact with children can build an asset in the community.
All right, Mr. Johnson, you know why we're here today, right?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, all right. What we're going to need to do is we're going to have to ask you to go with us.
What about my kids? I can't leave my kids.
Okay.
My wife's not home.
She's not home? Is she at work?
No, she went shopping with her sister today.
Okay.
Can I call her? I don't.
Sure. Can we give her a call so you can
Yeah.
come sit with your kids?
Yeah. Got her answering machine.
Okay. All right.
Something else we can do? Could I wait?
We can try. What about, you said she's with her sister?
Yeah.
What about her sister? Does she have a cell phone? You could try.
Yeah, I could try her sister.
Okay.
Sheila, hey, could I talk to Rachel? Is she there by chance? Just put her on the phone, okay? All right. Rachel, hey, I need you to come home right away. Yeah, the police are here right now. I need you to come home and be with the kids, okay? Talk about it later, okay? Just come home, okay? Love you. Okay, bye. You guys, your mom, come on, okay? I love you, son. She said it'd be an hour before she can get here.
Okay, that's fine. We'll sit with the kids and make sure that they're okay.
All right, buddy.
All right.
Okay. Can I stay? with him?
It's probably going to be better, Mr. Johnson, if you just go on. We go on and handle it outside. Maybe we should just take him outside. Okay. Probably be better for the kids.
Can I take my phone and make sure they're okay?
Yeah, you can. I'll take it with me. I'll hold on to it for you, but we'll take it. You can go ahead and come with me.
Okay, guys. Okay. Be okay. All right.
Come on out.
You good?
Johnson.
Yeah,
I'm
good.
good.
Okay.
Back is here.
All right. How you guys doing? Good. Okay. My name's Deputy Smith. What's your name? Brett. And you are?
Zach.
Zach, can I sit here for a minute?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. How you guys feeling?
Physical.
A little nervous? A little scared? That's okay. I understand.
What's going to happen to my dad?
Well, we're going to take him down to the station, and we need to talk to him about some things. He's going to be fine. He's going to be safe. He'll be all right, and I'm sure, like I said, he'll probably give you a call and let you know what's going on, okay? So don't worry about it. It's going to be good. Guess Mom will be here pretty soon, huh? Yeah, okay. So, you guys okay?
Okay, go ahead and step up. You know what, felony fraud, Mr. Johnson here, go ahead and do me a favor. Turn around, face the wall for me. Put your palms together, interlace your fingers, and spread your legs out for me. Spread them out wide as you can go. There you go. Point your toes out and turn to the left for me. He's gonna go in your unit, right?
Yeah, we can use my unit.
Okay, alrighty. Okay, put your palms together. As close as you can get, bring your palms together like you're praying.
That particular scenario really shows how police officers tied up every single loose end towards the best outcome. They addressed making multiple phone calls so that we could attempt to locate a suitable caretaker. They had the arrest happen in a dignified and compassionate fashion by having it be out of the sight of the children. And they also tied up the needs of that children as well by comforting them, giving them a little bit of information at their own level to reassure them as to what's going on.
If there's a way that you as an officer can direct the situation and control the situation so that I'm able to get the parent just outside the view of that child before I put the handcuffs on, and if I can do that safely, then I've preserved my safety, but I've also done the logical thing by preserving the child's recollection of what happened here today.
The scene of an arrest is routine for most officers, but for a person getting arrested and their children, it could be the worst day of their lives.
Trauma will have a long-term effect on kids. The type of effect it has depends on the age and the developmental stage of the child. But we do know that acting with common sense and kindness and recognizing the presence of children at the scene of an arrest can help alleviate or prevent some of that trauma.
I think it's very important that law enforcement understands the distinction between a child who they are seeing as a victim of abuse or neglect, or a child who is just happens to be a witness to their parent being arrested. One of the things that happens when a child is a victim of abuse or neglect, sometimes there's a pretty clear distinction that the officers are coming to rescue. The officers are coming to make things better. The officers are saviors. Very often when a parent is being arrested, the officer is not seen as someone who is helping or who is assisting. He's seen as someone who's breaking up the family. He's seen as someone who's taking a parent away. Very often the child has no sense of when that parent will return or if that parent will return. And sometimes the child doesn't even have a sense of why the officers are there.
From a 4-year-old's perspective, you've got men with guns breaking down the door, pointing those guns at your parents, rifling through things. That feels like a kidnapping unless somebody actually explains to you what's happening. If the child is subsequently, say, put in the police cart and taken to the children's shelter, it's pretty common for children to feel that they've been arrested because developmentally children are primed to think that whatever happens is their fault. So if nobody thinks to explain to them, it's not your fault, you haven't done anything wrong, your parent, depending on the age, is going to take a time out, but she's going to be safe. To their mind, they're all being hauled off to dungeons.
officers have to be very careful that they explain why they are in the home and that they reinforce the notion that they are in the home both to protect everyone in the home, and they can explain in a developmentally appropriate way that even though a parent is being taken away, that's not going to be the last time that that child sees that parent, and that the officer cares about the safety of that parent as well as the safety of the people in the home. And that is why the officer is there, because they have a concern about the safety of the children in the home.
Kids that of age where they know what's going on, they're human like us. You wouldn't want someone to come up at you, start yelling at you and tell you to do things when you don't know what's going on. Granted, that situation where you have to take charge of the scene. But if in a situation where you know that the parent can be arrested, they are cooperating, it is a good idea to take a minute to explain to the kid, if they are of age where they can understand you, what's going on.
That is so vivid and fraught with emotion, which is usually the nature of an arrest scene. People are rarely calm and soft-spoken in that moment, is just really etched in people's memories. Think about all the things that you really remember. They tend to be highly emotionally tinged scenarios. That's what imprints, particularly when you're little and you don't have another context to put it in. You don't have the maturity to understand the bigger picture. All they see is their parents being taken away.
Children, more than other people, are dependent upon adults for their safety and security. When something threatens your safety and security, you have a reaction to either flee or to fight. Children very often are least prepared to do either. They don't have vehicles. They don't have places to go very often. So in that situation, when you cannot flee or you cannot fight, you tend to become immobilized. That's the traumatic reaction.
Here in California, we have a 2/3 recidivism rate. So a child who's seen his parent arrested is very likely going to see that again within the next few years. It may be police, it may be parole officers coming back for their parent. It's not a one-time experience for kids. It's a trauma that's reenacted over and over.
When she got arrested, I was not there at the moment, but nobody explained anything to me. I was shocked, seriously. But then when I moved away to move with somebody else, that's when my whole world crushed. She told me she was going to be gone in LA she didn't say exactly for how long, but my estimate time was about 2 years.
It was really scary. When the police officers came in, I was the first one they encountered. I was in the living room, and these two men came in. I mean, I wasn't ignorant. I knew what a police officer was, but it's a terrifying event to have two people just barge into your house and not even say a word to you, just start walking around your house looking for who knows what. And I came out and I saw my sister crying and my mom freaking out and my dad being dragged down the stairs by the police officers. I mean, I understand he was struggling a lot and I don't know how else they could have dealt with it, but it just, from an observing point of view, it was really violent and traumatic.
The trauma of an arrest will often have long-term effects on children.
This is a lifelong impact on the child. Even as an adult, when people talk about what happened to them as a child, they can still hardly talk about how difficult this was, the impact on them.
Children look to their parents for protection. That's natural. Especially small children need to see their parents as powerful. So to see their parent disempowered, which is what happens when you're handcuffed and put into a police car, isn't just disturbing, it rattles their whole view of the world and their sense of safety and security.
These kids are the most high-risk kids that we know of. They're much more likely, somewhere between 5, maybe even 7 times more likely to end up in juvenile justice situations or as an adult to end up as an arrested person. And if you think about it, it makes sense. They're modeling behavior they've watched.
I ran into a case several years ago, and actually it was quite a few years ago when I was working patrol, and this child was what a lot of people would consider a young adult. He was 17, almost 18 years old, and I detained him for theft. And he basically did not care one bit about his life or anything around it. And I kind of, gave him an earful about what a drain he was on society and how embarrassed he should be, not thinking that I would have any impact on his life whatsoever, and never thought of him again till about a year later. I ran into him while getting coffee at a local market late at night, and this now young adult comes up to me and he said, "Hi, Deputy Scott, how are you?" I said, "Fine, how are you?" He goes, "You don't remember me, do you?" I said, "No, I'm sorry." And I said, "I run into a lot of people." He goes, "That's okay." He said, "I was the one that you stopped about a year ago on Christmas Eve. I was stealing a Christmas tree, and you yelled at me like no one's ever talked to me." He said, "My parents have never talked to me like that. No one's cared what I've done in my life." He says, "I grew up doing whatever I wanted." He said, "But you made me feel so bad that I went back to school, got my GED." He says, "I'm enrolled in a junior college. I've got an apartment, and I'm on my own, and I'm going to make it." We don't realize as cops what impact we have on children.
That impact that you have, you might only have that impact for 30 seconds with that child. They might not ever have any more experiences with you, and if that's a negative impact or they get a negative connotation from that reaction with you or seeing you react in a certain way, then that changes their perspective for life.
There is a real danger of losing track of children during an arrest. A tragic example of this is the Megan Mendez case.
If you don't have a coordinated response between law enforcement and child welfare workers, there's a danger of losing track of kids, because there may be kids at school, you're arresting a mother or a father, you've got a child in the car, and there are 3 others at school or in daycare.
But in one case that blew the wheels off the entire process, a girl named Megan Mendez.
The Mendez case was a highly publicized and really shocking wake-up call for all of us.
This was a situation where the mother was arrested for drugs. I don't believe the arrest was at home, but she had told her children, if something happens, go next door to the neighbors. So no one checked. They didn't check to see. They didn't ask her, did she have children?
So over a period of time, several months, the mother got sentenced to jail, prison time.
And eventually they found one of the 2 children. There were 2 little girls at the neighbors, but they could never find the other one. And it was several years before they searched through the yard and found her buried there. She'd actually been murdered by the neighbor.
No one up until that time, I think, really was aware of how often children are left informally and without any kind of appropriate background checks with neighbors or friends of the family.
So there was just a complete lack of accountability here. No one asked, did the mother have a child? The mother actually died of a drug overdose, so the mother wasn't around to say, where's my child?
But this couple had a history of child abuse of their own children, and so if there had been a background check, if child welfare services had been involved, it's possible that Megan Mendez would not have been killed.
Some parents are afraid to tell officers they have children.
And the parents who were being arrested didn't want to tell them because they were fearful of losing their kid to the institution system, in the welfare institution system. So it worked both ways. Don't ask, the cops didn't have to get involved. Don't tell, the woman would protect her child. She was thinking she would protect her child.
Keeping children in mind benefits law enforcement. If you reduce the child's exposure to trauma, you may ultimately reduce crime. At the same time, it helps build a positive image of law enforcement. Remember, these children will soon become adults in our communities.
Now, we try to tell, in our training, the deputies, the officers that go through our training, we try to let them know and make them aware that they have an effect. The language they use, the way they handle themselves, the professional attitude they bring.
And what they see, they will take that in their minds, and that will be their thought or their belief about what law enforcement is about, whether it's positive or negative. And I think we absolutely owe it to them, we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to society to represent ourselves in a professional manner.
They're the ones that we're going to be dealing with in 5 years, 10 years, whatnot. I mean, and
we need good people all the time in this line of work too, and if we could make them, leave them with that positive impression and they come forward, then it's a good thing.
And ultimately they'll become adults and they'll either be law-abiding or they will not and pursue criminal activity, and their relationship with the police and with social services will quite often be a result of these early experiences.
And for us, that impacts us if we look at it that way in the long run, because we won't have to deal with them in 5 or 10 years. And community and society will be much the better for it. And I think every cop wants that.
At the time of parental arrest, it's important for officers and deputies to monitor children for negative effects like fear, worry, confusion, sadness, guilt, embarrassment, isolation, and anger. Please keep an eye on these kids.
This is different. The child isn't a victim. The child isn't a victim of anything. We're merely taking their parents away for some unrelated matter, and I don't have another parent or guardian to leave the child with.
The number one question they should ask is, do you have children? Do children live here? Another thing that the officers need to do is look around, look in the environment, see if there are signs that children live there.
This section will outline the procedures to ensure that peace officers and custodial employees inquire whether an arrestee has minor dependent children without appropriate supervision, always asking, do you have children? And we will cover the use of additional telephone calls by arrestees so they can arrange for child care. Key points include determining at the time of arrest if the arrestee is responsible for minor children and their location. Officers should look for evidence of children at the scene. Allow arrestee time to arrange for child care with a responsible party after running both a law enforcement and child welfare services background check as appropriate. Notify County Child Welfare Services per agency protocol. And document the placement of the children and any temporary caregiver in the arrest report. First, it's important for officers to determine if the arrestee is responsible for minor children.
Some of the biggest fears of parents when parents get into trouble themselves is losing their children. And so it's not unusual or wouldn't be beyond the realm of possibilities for a parent to not tell you they have kids. Maybe you don't contact that parent in the home. You can't see the telltale signs of children present. And maybe not even at their car or whatever where there would be any clues. That's a tough situation because they don't tell you they have children present. So how are you to find out? That's where those extra questions come in. And no matter how hard you try sometimes to find the answers to those extra questions, sometimes you're just not going to get them. But you have to make that effort.
Officers need to look for evidence of children at the scene of an arrest.
Once an officer is on scene and we've made the arrest or whatever, I think that's when the officers need to be able to shift gears just a little bit and look for signs of children in the home.
If you see indications there's a child in the house, we all know what those are. There's cereal, there's backpacks, there's toys, there's children's video games. You see these things, and it's really important to inquire: is there a child in this household?
Whatever the situation might be, you have to be aware of everything that's going on around you, and that's not always easy because officers tend to have that tunnel vision and just focus on what's in front of them. But if they just take a second and pause and look around, you'll take a whole lot of other information in, and I think that's good, not just police work, but it's what should be done.
I'm telling you, this is a mistake. Look, it's not my stuff, okay?
Hold on. Stop for a second. Let's have a seat. Sit down. Do you have any kids?
No.
Do you have any kids?
Look, I don't have any kids, okay?
Okay, relax. So who plays with all these toys?
They're my girlfriend's kids.
And where's your girlfriend at now?
She's out of town for a couple days.
And the kids?
They're at school.
What school do they go to?
I don't know. The one up the street, River City Elementary or something.
And if you're gone, who's going to watch the kids?
I don't know.
And what are their names?
Tommy and Sarah Murphy,
How old are they?
6 and 8.
Okay. What do you think, partner?
You know, I don't want these kids coming home to an empty house. We'll take them out to the car. I'll make the arrangements. I'll contact Child Welfare Services, and then I'll call the school and speak with the school resource officer.
Yeah, you're right. I think we need to do that. Stand up. Walk with us.
This scenario shows why it's so important to ask, are there children? The children weren't there, but there was some reasons to think there might be children.
But they asked. That was what was, I think, most important. They asked, they observed, and they asked.
There's going to be there's a lot of single moms out there that have boyfriends that move in. And as an officer, you go to these calls, you should be looking around. As you go in the house anyway, you're already looking around for your safety.
If you have a mom that you've arrested and she's going to go to jail, she has her purse with her, you have to search that before you take it to jail. That's the rules of taking someone to jail, to make sure that there's nothing in there. Well, as you're searching that, look for telltale signs. Look for children's pictures. Look for Social Security cards of kids.
Once an arrest scene is safe, allow the arrestee reasonable time to arrange for child care with a responsible party, and then run a background check on any temporary caregiver.
There's some really very simple, practical, not rocket science things that they can do at the scene at that time. And one of them is to allow that person being arrested to quickly go access their address book and ask, who are the important persons to this child in your family and in your immediate circle of friends? And right at that moment, collect those names and phone numbers. And then that gives the law enforcement officers opportunity to then follow up, perhaps run criminal history on them, make the adequate notifications to those individuals.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we want to try to find some way where the parent can come up with some manner in which to deal with the care of the children. We don't want to be taking these children into protective custody merely because their parents are on arrest. The child isn't a victim. We don't need to be placing them into the system, so to speak. But what we have to do is we have to provide that parent with both the time and the resources to make those arrangements. And essentially resources boils down to we need to give them communications, and that means we need to let them have a telephone. And so we need to give them access to a phone just for the purposes, not only in addition to the phone calls we've always given them, but in addition to that, we want you to give them a few extra phone calls, essentially as many as they need, to be honest.
Yeah, it is okay to let the arrestee on scene make the calls. Just keep in mind, officer safety is of much concern.
It might seem like a lot, but the officers need to understand, and I think they do, that allowing this person 5 extra minutes at the scene to make 1 or 2 phone calls from the scene to get a child care provider at the location is just going to save them tons of time later. And again, if that means that the officer does it, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Once officers realize children are present and will need supervision, notify local child welfare services as soon as possible following your agency protocol. Child welfare services personnel have the expertise and experience to assist officers in determining the proper placement of children when they need immediate supervision.
Once the deputy realizes that there's going to be a placement issue, the sooner they make the call, the better. If they make it right away, that's great. It helps them. And most deputies and most agencies are aware of that because there's things to do. It is securing proper placement of the child, but then they've got reports to write. They've got tows to call.
The child welfare people, when I contact them, are able to either respond out or talk to us on the phone and provide us with information out of their field and out of even their databases that help us make appropriate decisions in conjunction with them.
Social work staff are there to share information and to share in the assessment of what's the best placement for those children. And should the threshold rise to the need for protective custody, then that does become a joint and shared responsibility.
Yeah, where I work, the buck ends with us. So the patrol officer is making the decision. And I think that's really an important point here is as you're doing this and as you're starting to work with these other agencies, it has to be very clear where the buck stops and who is going to make the final decision. Yes, I take input from them. Yes, they tell me what they think I should or should not do.
Although when you drive away and you just handed that child off to someone, in the back of your mind, especially if you have kids, in the back of your mind, you're wondering, I wonder if I did the right thing. Now, if you call Department of Children's Services, you know, I've done the right thing. They will now come back and follow up what I've done.
Documentation is critical for keeping track of these children. Always add a notation in the arrest report about who the children are left with. Child Welfare Services also needs this information so they can do a follow-up check. And some agencies require officers to notify a supervisor.
In your report, you should put that I left the children with aunt, uncle, the name obviously, the date of birth, and what you did to make sure that this is a safe person to leave the children with. Computer contacts, which in our department means every contact that was recorded with this person is a necessary step, I would say. Hopefully you contacted Child Welfare Services and sought their input. That could be put in there too. I called CWS and spoke with social worker such and such, and she did a check and said that this person was okay. That should be included, and a criminal history check should be included, and a warrants check should be included with all that.
We need to know if this individual has ever had any services with child welfare services, if this individual is appropriate, and we'd like to have the information to follow up.
Anytime you end up arresting a parent where there's a child involved, where there's not going to be a caretaker or a biological parent or a court-appointed guardian, then it's right in our general orders. You have to notify a supervisor, and that supervisor responds and helps evaluate the situation. And it's just another tool out of your toolbox to use. You know, rely on that supervisor to help you.
Now, let's turn to booking. Correctional officers should confirm if the arrestee is responsible for minor children. They should allow the arrestee to make additional phone calls to arrange for child care. They should notify County Child Welfare Services as appropriate. And finally, all documentation must be completed.
In San Joaquin County, when we book people into jail, the booking officers have a whole list of questions they have to ask, and the property that we bring with the arrestee, they have to go through to make sure everything's there, to make sure everything's safeguarded. So there's an onus on them, too, to make sure that they ask the questions that maybe the police officers asked or didn't get an answer to or forgot to ask.
Well, now the correctional officer is at that point where now the guy, he is now calmed down. He's not all amped up. Now I just got arrested. He's been able to calm down now, and the correctional officer is having more of a conversation with him. They're more relaxed. So now they should ask him the simple questions. Do you have kids? You know, well, how many kids do you have? You know, do you need to contact them? Do you need to call them or anything? Have you called your kids since you've been arrested? When's the last time you talked to your kids? Who knows where your kids are?
Sometimes parents won't say the truth to the officer in the field when they're more likely to be straightforward with the correctional officer. Oftentimes when we take parents into the correctional facility, these are frequent flyers. They know the correctional staff. It's like a homecoming. And they will oftentimes be more forthright with the correctional staff than they will with officers in the field.
Just like you say, searching. I'm not going to assume that, hey, that officer over there searched this guy. If he hands him off to me, I'm going to search him for my safety. Not that I don't trust him, but you always search. And the same is with asking about children. There's no reason that a correctional officer should just assume that this officer asked him these questions. It doesn't hurt to just ask them again.
Well, in Ventura County, when we allow somebody to make the phone calls from the booking cell, they can make as many phone calls as they need to secure proper placement of the child.
Child welfare workers are an excellent resource for peace officers, for either helping with the placement of children or determining if protective custody is necessary.
What it really does when law enforcement calls child welfare, the officer can relax. It's a role responsibility for child welfare. They want to be there to take care of these kids. They're statutorily responsible for responding.
Sometimes law enforcement will arrive at a scene and they're investigating one thing, and it won't involve child abuse at all. But in the course of that investigation, they uncover some scenario that does involve the abuse or neglect of the children in the home. And then all bets are off, everything changes, and the level is elevated, the bar's raised, and we have to look at then protective custody for those children. And so in those child abuse scenarios, then the child welfare agency and the police jurisdiction will then need to jointly make the decision for protective custody towards the safety and placement of that child.
Law enforcement and welfare services should always conduct background checks on potential caregivers before leaving a child with a caregiver.
When social workers and police officers go out and work together on these scenes, what we have happening is two parallel investigations. The police officers are looking at whether a crime has been committed and can access their criminal history regarding the people in the home. The social workers at the same time are conducting their assessment of what has happened in the past, what child welfare history has gone on in the past, and what's the best and safest appropriate placement for the child at the end of that case.
The police department obviously would do a separate investigation from child welfare services. We, of course, would run rap sheets, name checks, things along those lines. But what's nice is the social services worker actually runs a parallel investigation, and they have availability to information that we do not have, such as prior contacts within the social services realm.
Child welfare has their own database. It's a statewide database. It's linked. All 58 counties are linked, and so I can find out if there's been any prior history of child abuse on any family, and that serves both professional groups.
You know, I know we constantly talk about how this benefits the children, but frankly it benefits the working officers as well. I think the best example I can come up with is one where we had a father who was calling in and making a report after the kid came back from visitation with the mother. The father calls up to complain that there was some violence there perpetrated by the stepdad. A very common thing for us to have to respond to. It's a typical Sunday night call that people go to. And so we're talking to him and we're trying to assess from him if there's a pattern of this kind of stuff going on at the other household. And he says, no, this is the first time I've ever been aware of it. There's never been an issue with it before. And so we're trying to say, he sounds credible at that point in the game. And I was really surprised, and the first time I really benefited from this was when we called and we talked to the child welfare people, and they accessed their database, a complete separate database from ours. They said, oh gosh, no, he's reported this to us 3 times in the past. Now, for me, that is a huge investigative aid. I can now assess the credibility of this person who's reporting a crime to me and try to make some logical decisions about how to go about investigating that through the evening. None of this would have worked well without the relationship that we've developed with our child welfare people in our county. And frankly, that particular example isn't about arresting a parent when the child isn't a victim. But what that example illustrates is that as we do those things and we start developing relationships with those organizations, we start recognizing how we can benefit each other in other situations. And that was a wonderful benefit to me that evening and to my officers to be able to shortcut an unfounded complaint and to document that and put it to bed without having to essentially set it on fire.
Working with child welfare services to help determine proper placement of minor children is best practices for peace officers in California, and it also helps limit potential liability.
So by allowing a child to go to somebody that's going to harm that child, we've just created a big problem as far as liability. And that's something we want to avoid at all costs. And by taking a few extra minutes to do this, making a few extra phone calls, making a few extra contacts, that can just save you tons of grief.
The drawback, or if you will, the risk management issue for the agency is huge, because the obvious question and the responsible question is going to be, why didn't you ask? Why didn't you do anything to ensure that, one, that there were no kids in the house, and if there were, to make sure that they were taken care of. And as managers, as heads of agencies, we have got to look at that and make sure we don't, for the safety of the kids, first and foremost. Secondly, if you want to look at it from a fiduciary kind of view, liability.
In the course of arresting parents, child abuse issues may emerge. If this happens, existing child abuse protocols should be followed. The standards presented in this training are for dealing with children when there are no child abuse issues. If you have any additional questions, Consult your department's legal representative.
In a way that when I went through the academy, and the things I learned when I was first on the street is you run into children, the easiest way to deal with the children is to go ahead and they qualify. If you're taking their parent away or they don't have a guardian or something, they qualify under the W&I section to be taken into protective custody and put into a shelter. And it was kind of automatic. You know, that was the best and easiest, quickest way to deal with them without any thought to the trauma you put upon these children or their point of view or an explanation to them of what was going on. Things have evolved just in the short time, 15 years I've been in law enforcement, is now we're thinking more on the lines of what is the impact?
In my mind, what it does is it takes what police officers do best, and that's investigate crimes and stabilize scenes. And it takes what social workers do best, which is determine the safety of children in their home. And somehow, when we put those two groups together, we come out with by far the best outcomes for children and families.
Officers need to be familiar with the child welfare services in their community. These can be both government and non-governmental agencies. They're resources for the placement of children when parents can't arrange suitable child care at the time of their arrest. Also, a memorandum of understanding between law enforcement and child welfare services is strongly encouraged. This will help establish partnerships and procedures to assist with the placement of children. Our next scenario deals with a pre-planned arrest warrant, and because officers are aware that children may be at the scene, child welfare services are brought in early.
Partner, CWS is here. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Coach.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good, yourself?
Good. So what's going on?
We have a search warrant that we're going to conduct approximately 2 blocks from here at 414 Elm Street.
Okay.
The reason why I've called you is because there are several children in the home, small children, about 4 to 5. What we intend to do is go to the location and perform the search warrant. And once we're there, then and we clear it, we can go ahead and ask you to handle the kids for us.
No problem. Is there any drug history or anything?
No, we did a criminal history check on the house and we didn't find any.
Violent crimes or domestic violence, anything like that?
No.
No? Okay, what, I need a car seat?
We may need several car seats.
Okay.
If you could help us with that, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, what about language?
We probably will need a bilingual speaker.
Okay, I'm bilingual, so.
Good, that'll help us. My partner's also bilingual,
okay,
so she could help us as well.
Good.
Okay, the location is approximately 2 blocks from here. We're going to spawn to the location. We're going to park our cars down the street. What we'll do is walk up the street on the north side. The house has a door facing forward, 2 garage doors and 2 windows. As we approach the location, if you could stand out in the front on the perimeter, and also your self-serve, stand out in the front on the perimeter. My partner and I will approach to the front door and conduct the search warrant. After we finish the search warrant and we clear the house, I'll come back out and I'll tell you that it's clear. And if you could come in and take care of the children for us, we'd appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Let's just be safe.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's go.
River City Police Department, search warrant, open the door.
It's taking a while. I hope everything's okay. Is everything okay?
Yes, everything's safe. It's safe for you guys to come in now.
Okay. So what happened?
We have 4 kids that are sleeping in their room. The stolen merchandise was recovered and it's secured in the garage.
Okay. Were there any guns or weapons or anything in the kids' room?
No weapons. Everything looks appropriate.
Okay. Cool. Let's go.
Follow me. I'll show you to the kids.
The most important critical aspect of this scenario is that social workers are working with law enforcement. They've decided this is the only way we can do it. If there are kids here, we want you here to assist us.
I mean, that's a perfect idea to take that opportunity to get them in on the ground floor right off the bat, to have them there so you don't go out there and serve the search warrant and then what do you do? Now there's kids there and if you're stuck for a couple extra hours waiting because you didn't make any notifications and they're not ready and they've already planned their day.
And it's a new era in law enforcement. I think it's a new era in social work with this. And it's nice to see the collaborative effort between both organizations. And I think it's nothing but a positive thing for us, for the workers, for the victims, for the citizens that we deal with.
A memorandum of understanding between law enforcement and social services is strongly encouraged to establish partnerships and procedures to assist in the placement of dependent children.
The idea behind the Memorandum of Understanding is that every community is different, and the circumstances and requirements and personnel available and resources, they all differ from community to community. So rather than the state impose a particular protocol that must be followed in every local law enforcement jurisdiction, we wanted to provide a model of how it can work and have the essential elements present that then could be adapted and adopted by each local jurisdiction based on their own particular and unique circumstances. But equally important in the Memorandum of Understanding is the Child Welfare Services side, which says very clearly that Child Welfare Services has a responsibility to respond to requests from law enforcement for assistance, to be willing to provide information on the family, to go to the scene of an arrest when they're asked to, that's an essential part of the agreement as well. One of the things we heard over and over again from law enforcement officers where this is working is that the key to it all is not only having the protocol in place, but also having the timely response from Child Welfare Services, and ideally within 30 minutes. And what happens then is that over time, there's trust developed and a relationship that develops that's positive for both law enforcement and child welfare.
The benefit to officers is they understand role clarity. They know what their role is, whom to call, what's going to happen at the time, where to take the child, what hospital, when to meet the social worker. Everybody understands their response, and it's a joint response. Most often, it's a joint response between law enforcement and social workers.
So if we can encourage throughout the state those two agencies to get a working relationship, then we can bring them in at the front end when they are most beneficial, when there is the greatest need. And so as agencies develop those memorandums of understandings and those protocols with the child welfare service agencies, they're going to start seeing the benefits that we've seen where we're working with this, where we need it, we call for it, and it's out there in a very timely fashion.
And so philosophies are changing, and it's no longer get in, get out, and as quick as you can on a call, and whatever happens, and let the cars lay where they lay. Now it's take that extra step and call on them, and they're willing to do whatever they can to help us out and work as partners. We actually have a child welfare services worker in our unit now that's housed at our police department in the detectives unit, who is available to us during regular business hours for all of my detectives to consult, to get information from, to go out to calls with, to call extra people from her side. It's when you have a face with a person's name that you can call on, and they know that they're going to have to see you every day because they work in the same office, there's some responsibility there, and there's some willingness to cooperate more than just picking up a phone and not really knowing who you're talking to on the other end.
Probably the most important thing that both professional groups need to recognize, child welfare workers and law enforcement, is that the development of a protocol, a joint response, a coordinated approach to this critical, chaotic time is going to have lifelong impacts on everyone, including them. They're going to be able to walk away and say, we did everything for this family, because they worked it out together beforehand. People sat down, developed a protocol, and they are following that protocol.
Each community is different, and some communities have both government and non-governmental agencies that are able to provide appropriate temporary custodial services. It's important for peace officers to know the resources in their community.
We do have faith-based and nonprofit agencies that we refer people to, but as far as an immediate response when an arrest is going on, law enforcement has to be the government entity involved in that. And if a child does need to be placed in protective custody, the Child Welfare Services Agency is the legal entity that's mandated to take responsibility for that.
I think it's highly important for the community-based organizations to be involved, as they are in San Francisco, because it takes the pressure off the parent as well as the child, because they have both bought into the process. It keeps CPS out of it because they have that institutional label and tag that a lot of kids don't want to be part of. And so it relieves them of the opportunity. They work as counselors and guideline people rather than as institutional people watching these for the well-being of the child. So they're more as caseworkers than anything else, the child welfare folks, while the community-based organization serves as the stability organization that takes care of the child. We've had research reports done in the Research Bureau, and most recently one by my colleague Jenny Puttyfoot on the best guidelines that have been developed over time. And in those guidelines, there's options, various options that those guidelines offer, such as how to best utilize community-based organizations, how to best utilize child welfare institution organization resources, and in what situations to best utilize those situations. And how, in the guidelines, the law enforcement can have the options, if they choose to utilize community-based organizations in the response to children when their parents are arrested. And that really offers them more resources and really takes some of the pressure off some law enforcement agencies that may not have a full-fledged response child welfare agency, such as Los Angeles County.
You know, I work in a large urban region of the state. I have a lot of resources at my disposal. I recognize that there are going to be more rural counties, there are going to be smaller agencies who perhaps will not have access to numerous CWS people who can respond in a timely fashion. You know, we're setting the bar high here. We're asking people to try to do something that may be very difficult from where you work, because you're going to have to reassess and redeploy your resources to make something like this work. But the point is that if you can put this in place, you insulate yourself as an organization from liability because you're doing the best practice when it comes to how we resolve placement of these children. And not only that, I mean, this is just the right thing to do with children, even though this is going to be a difficult thing to apply in a lot of places throughout this state. And this is really, I think, where it becomes incumbent upon administrations of both CWS agencies and law enforcement agencies to work together and to develop a cooperative protocol or MOU, whatever you want to call it, so that the working officer or the working deputy can interact with that other agency through some protocol that's in place that will benefit everybody on the ground.
Both community-based organizations and county child welfare services can be an important resource for peace officers. Check with your department for current procedures and policies.
Police officers are concerned initially with officer safety and public safety. Once those issues are addressed and the arrest is not being compromised or the investigation is not being compromised, we have a responsibility to recognize children at the scene of the arrest and to provide appropriate supervision for those children until other arrangements are made.
So in years past, where maybe our main concern, our main objective was just taking the bad guy away and whatever happened to the children, well, that's not our responsibility. In the day and age, in the era of law enforcement now, that is our responsibility.
In this segment, we'll examine law enforcement's responsibility to provide temporary supervision of minor children to ensure their safety and well-being. The key issues: protect children from the volatile nature of the arrest. Law enforcement shall provide immediate supervision for children until an appropriate caregiver or child welfare worker arrives. Law enforcement is encouraged to collaborate with local child welfare services to establish a protocol for an expedited response. And the best practice is to try all other options before transporting a child in a police vehicle. Let's start with protecting children at the scene of an arrest.
It doesn't take long when you're making an arrest on a regular basis for it just to become a regular part of your job. And sometimes we forget, after we've been at it for a while, that this is a horrible experience for the people whom we've arrested. And for most people, they're not going to go through this more than once or a few times in their life. and that we need to sort of recognize what a stress that is on them. And so if you can translate that into what a stress is it for their children when we take the parents off to jail, now what can we do to take this incident and not make it a traumatic lifetime event for the child? Not to make it something where the child hates us forever because all they know is we dragged mom and dad off and didn't do anything for them. So the way we interact with them has a huge impact later on in how we deal with them as adolescents and as adults. These are our future customers. They're going to be our victims, they're going to be our reporting parties, or they're going to be our suspects. And it's up to us how we deal with them, which end they fall on there.
A lot of times kids said to me, I know what my mom was being punished for. I know what my dad did, but what did I do? What was I being punished for? And one girl said, my mom was sentenced to going to jail. I was sentenced to watching her go to jail and to growing up without a mother. So I think, again, that initial contact with police is the moment when we can send the kid the message that they also are bad and are being punished, or that they're not, that it's not their fault. It's important also, I think, not to underestimate the parenting instinct of somebody that we're arresting, not to assume that because we're arresting somebody, they're a bad parent, they don't care about their kids, they don't want to protect their kids. I remember addressing a group of police officers in New Mexico, and afterwards a gentleman, an officer there, raised his hand and told me that he had been involved in a very intense hostage situation where a man had his whole family hostage. He had a gun and they were trying to negotiate to get him out. And as soon as this officer told the man, after a several-hour standoff, that he wouldn't arrest him in front of his children, that he wouldn't make the children witness that, the man came out.
As a social worker, I was called out to the scene where 2 San Jose police officers and their sergeants were arresting a young mother. She was about 22 years old, and she had an 18-month-old little boy with her. The sergeant and the 2 officers and I went off to the side and we talked. And I said, let's do this the best way that we can. This isn't going to be pretty. And they were in complete agreement. This mother, bear in mind, was calm, and that made all the difference. She was not combative. She was working with us. So what the police officers and I decided to do was to allow her to carry her child, gather up his favorite blanket and teddy bear. We all walked together out the front door, around the corner. She was not in handcuffs. We walked to my vehicle. She put the child into the car seat for me with the officers standing by so that there would be no way anyone would be injured and so that the child was comforted. And we said goodbye. And the officers then escorted her back to her car, to their police vehicle. Had that little one seen that more traumatic scenario where mom was being handcuffed and I had to take the child physically from the mom, it would have been completely different. But everything was resolved in a much, much better way, much better outcome, just because we were able to work together in that situation.
We have a term that we use sometimes in police jargon of, dusting people off when we've, done a felony stop on them, prone them out on pavement, and just because we got probable cause and reasonable cause to believe they're involved in something, and when they're not, we, pick them up, say, this is why we stopped you, this is what we did, what we did, you have any questions, concerns, and generally people accept that, and they go on. Well, we need to do at least that with the kids that we come into contact with. Do you know why mommy and daddy are being taken away? Or do you know why we're here? Do you have any questions? They'll be, they might be gone for a little bit, but somebody's going to be here to take care of you. They need to hear that what comes after that but, that somebody is taking care of them. And that's what this part of this mandate and part of this law is meant to do. And we can only do that with the relationship with CWS.
I like to see if a child does have to be removed from their home, not necessarily to be placed in foster care, but to go somewhere else for the evening. I want to make sure they take something with them that belongs to them, that they are going to feel safe, a security blanket, if you will. It might literally be a security blanket. It might be a stuffed animal. It might be a T-shirt. I'll ask them, is there something you want to take with you that will help you feel better? I don't know if they're allowed to bring toys in their car, but if they can, I think for an officer to ask a child, is there something that will make you feel better if an officer has to take them, is very powerful. One, it's going to be potentially a calming effect on the child. Two, it humanizes a police officer, and that then relates to what that child's opinion is going to be of law enforcement in the future.
I just called my sister. She's going to be here in a few minutes.
Okay. How far away is she?
She's about 15 minutes.
I'm 17. I can take care of her. I can stay here by myself.
You're 17 years old?
Yes, I'm 17.
Hey, she's 17. I've got a babysitter that's 16. She could stay here with her little sister. We've really got to get rolling. We got a lot of calls to go to.
Can you just wait till my sister gets here?
She's not 18. She's still a minor. We're going to have to call Child Welfare Services and run her. We can't just leave her with anybody.
Okay. You know what? I need to get some information on your sister. What's her name?
Irene.
Irene what?
Cooper.
Cooper. And her date of birth?
11/19/86.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and run her.
You got a few minutes, yeah, if you want to talk to your kids.
216 Victor, I need a warrant check on an Irene Cooper, C-O-O-P-E-R. Date of birth is November 19th, 1986. 216 Victor?
I promise I'll call you as soon as I get there. All right.
One Irene Cooper comes back, no wants, no warrants.
I love you. I love you.
She comes back clear, but I'm going to call Child Welfare Services and make sure.
Okay.
Child Welfare Services, Wendy speaking.
Hi, Wendy. This is Deputy Lewis. I need to do a check on an Irene Cooper, if you could, please.
Can you spell the first name for me?
First name, Irene, I-R-E-N-E.
Last name?
Cooper, C-O-O-P-E-R.
And her date of birth?
11/19/86.
Okay, hold on one second. Okay, she comes up clear. Are there any other adults in the home?
No, just the one that we're transporting.
Okay, she's clear. It's all good.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Aunt comes back clear.
Okay. All right. We'll go ahead. I'll just go sit in the car and wait and start the paperwork.
Okay, I'll stay in here and hang out with the kids.
All right.
It's okay.
That'll be fine.
Okay, I'll call you as soon as I get there. Don't worry, Auntie's going to be here, okay? So don't worry.
Just go in.
I'm just going to go talk to them, okay?
Hey, how are you guys doing?
What's going to happen to my mom?
What's going to happen is we're going to take her down to the station. We're going to ask her some questions. And in a little bit, she'll be able to call you. She's going to be safe, so there's no need for you to be worried. Your aunt's on her way. Irene. It's your Aunt Irene.
Mm-hmm.
She's coming, and she'll be here with you. She's going to hang out with you guys, okay? But your mom is safe. You don't have to be worried about her, okay? It's going to be okay. And I'm going to hang out here with you until your aunt gets here.
Okay.
Okay. What do you guys like to do?
Well, I read.
You like to read?
I like to read.
Okay, well, you know what? I would love to hear you read to me.
Okay.
At least until she gets here, okay? Okay. I don't want you guys to be scared at all. All right?
Okay.
Having children myself, I have a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old, and the both of them have babysat over the, especially my 17-year-old the last couple of years. My 13-year-old is now starting to babysit. And having that in the back of your mind, you run into a situation like this, and it's like 17, they totally capable of staying by themselves. I'm sure their parent allows them to stay by themselves and probably care for that 8-year-old. But technically, and reality-wise, you don't know the mentality of this 17-year-old. You don't know the capability of this 17-year-old. You only know that this person is 17. And maybe they are responsible, maybe they're not responsible. Those are questions that you can't answer in the short period of time that you're going to have contact with them. You have to take that extra step to notify somebody else, to get the other side of the equation involved. Get Child Welfare Services involved. Let them help you make that proper decision.
It's always a good idea to notify Child Welfare Services as early as possible so they can provide a timely response.
If you know you're going to tow the car, you call the tow truck as soon as you realize that, so you don't have to spend an hour waiting for the tow truck. Well, once that became ingrained that this is sort of the same thing, when I recognize I have a need to get child welfare people out to deal with the children, that as soon as I'm able to recognize that and get that ball rolling, that makes my job easier to do, and that makes everything roll in a timely fashion.
If there are pit bulls in the yard or in the house, You want animal control there because, I mean, you want the dogs neutralized as soon as possible, as safely as possible for yourself and the people in the house. When it comes to children in my department, it's not thought of as much, and I think we need to think more about that. If children are in the house, and sometimes it's many children, having CWS there beforehand, notifying them beforehand, and having them there would be a very useful thing.
In California, peace officers are responsible for the temporary supervision of children when their parents are arrested. Once the scene is safe, officers need to find a suitable friend or family member to take over temporary supervision. Child Welfare Services should assist in the selection process.
In the past, if there were children present during an arrest, the officers had no choice but to do a shelter booking, to book the children 300 W&I, which may or may not have been appropriate at that time. What we hope with this policy is to create a new normal by providing officers in the field alternatives to doing a formal shelter booking.
The first and best choice for temporary custody for law enforcement should be suitable family members that are familiar to the child, that will make the child feel safe, and that we can feel comfortable leaving that child with. After family members are exhausted, then we can look at other suitable caretakers, such as babysitters who are known to the child, or neighbors who have an ongoing relationship with the child. But the caveat there is those individuals who are not related to them, you absolutely need to make sure that the security checks are in place, that you check their criminal history, and that you would check with CWS representatives to make sure that there haven't been outstanding cases attributed to those other non-related individuals.
Law enforcement is encouraged to collaborate with local child welfare services to establish a protocol for the proper placement of children. Remember, the primary goal is to minimize negative effects on children while maintaining the integrity of the arrest and the safety of everyone. This is how Riverside County establishes their child welfare protocols.
Riverside County has a community forum at least 3 times a year, and at that forum, participants include law enforcement, nurses, public health nurses, mental health, schools, district attorney, county council, social workers, and mental health workers. They're all coming together to discuss the issues. How do we make it better? So I think that's really what we're looking at, is there's a whole array of professionals who need to come together and understand the importance of what happens to children at the time of arrest. The 2 most critical are law enforcement and child welfare. They're the 2 who have that mandatory statutory responsibility, and it's most critical that they develop the protocol.
When children are in school at the time of a parental arrest, school police or school resource officers can help out.
So we have the availability to call that school resource officer and let them know, hey, we've arrested the parent, contact the children, hold on to them after school hours. We'll have child welfare services come by. And without contacting the school, you run the risk of having the children leave school like normal, walk home or take a bus home, however they normally get home, and there's nobody there. And they don't know what's happened. If we are unaware or we don't pay attention to the fact that there's children present and we leave the house, lock the door, we don't leave a note because there's nobody to leave a note for. We didn't think there was anybody there. So that's the key element, is you have to ask those extra questions to get to that point. That would be a nightmare.
The best practice is to try all other options before transporting a child in a police vehicle.
There are going to come times where you're waiting for the child welfare people to come out and help resolve the issue of how we're going to place the children. The temptation is going to be sometimes to take that child up and not wait for a long time in the field, but take the child perhaps to the station and then wait to meet there. And really where we're hoping to go with this is the concept that putting the child in the backseat of a police car is the last thing we want to be doing with them. That creates a whole lot of issues, especially as the children get younger and it's more difficult for them to discern the difference between people who are in the backseat of a car because they're bad, and then after they've called 911 because mommy and daddy are fighting, what do? We put them in the backseat of a police car.
Using child welfare services or CPS, it's better to have them come, have the child taken to another location in their car, which is a normal car, like their family car. with somebody who's not in a uniform. It's not in the back of a patrol car behind a cage where they think they've done something wrong.
There will be times where those resources are not available, and you are probably going to have to take a child as a last resort in a police car, and then what we need to do is make every effort possible to sort of neutralize the negative effect that that has with the kids.
Take a few minutes with that child and make it a game. Show them the car, show them the radio, how it works. Let them see the car as it is. It's just a mode of transportation for us. Let them see that there's good people in it, us, and that we do transport other people in it. Explain it to them.
I'm almost embarrassed to say, when I was a young officer and I had small children in the car, I would sing songs with them as we drove over to the shelter. As silly as that is to sing children's songs in the car, the kids were totally for it, and to have them singing along as we're driving through traffic really takes their mind off where they are and what the resources are. And as silly as that is, that worked very well for me. Well, and there's also this old trick that I think just about every officer knows, and you carry a teddy bear in the trunk. And if you have that available for a youngster and you give the youngster a teddy bear before they get in the police car, or just when you're dealing with it, that creates a focal point for them that is a positive focal point. As the children get older and they're more able to process the nature of what's going on, then you certainly could use that as an opportunity to explain, I'm not able to take you in a regular car, we're going to have to go over in the police car, you're going to need you to sit in back, but it's not because you're in trouble.
You have to take time. You can't just sit a kid in the back. Explain to him what's going on, and it sets him at ease.
It's sort of a long-standing thing within almost every agency throughout the state to have a policy or procedure in place for the physical how to transport children when you're transporting them in your car. And we used to say, hey, put the kid up front, don't put them in the cage, it'll be less stressful for them. But with the advent of passenger side airbags, that day is really gone. And you don't put children in front because there's a physical danger to them when you put them in the front seat, for young children.
Well, we used our volunteers a lot. We had a list of volunteers that we would use, and before you were going to the station or got to the station, you would call the station and say, hey, I am bringing 2, 3, or 1 child to the station. I've already contacted Children's Services, they're en route. Hey, can you call one of the volunteers on the list and have them come and sit with the children while I'm doing the paperwork? They would make the call, and in our briefing room downstairs, we had a ton of toys. There were toys already there, so the volunteer would come, they would have the children down there, you would go and explain to the child what's going on, you introduce the children or the child to the volunteer, and then the volunteer would be down there with the child playing games. We had TVs down there, they had videos that they could watch, and we would be upstairs and we could finish our work.
This training is meant as a guideline, and each county has or should develop its own protocol for temporary custody of minors. Please consult your department policy or local protocol on these issues.
Partnerships between law enforcement agencies and children welfare services organizations are critical, and they've been proven to work. In Santa Clara County, in San Francisco, in LA County, and now in the city of LA, we have a rapport, a liaison, a real partnership with CWS workers where they know what we do and how we do it, and we reciprocate. We have the same understanding from them. We no longer have the well, you're just a social worker and I'm a cop and that kind of thing. We've come to recognize on both parts that the best way to take care of kids or families is for both of us to work together.
This mandate is raising the bar for peace officers and their responsibilities for children at the time of a parental arrest. But it can only succeed when officers have a partnership with social workers. Several California cities and counties have already started this partnership. In this section, we'll examine their experiences.
I can't believe this. I don't know, but we're late.
No, we have
Gosh,
to do
this is like so. I don't know.
Hi.
Hi.
You realize that you just ran through a stop sign back there?
No, I'm really late. I'm going to pick up my baby right now. So
I understand.
Here's
You
my-
already have your license and
Yes.
registration? Good to go. Do me a favor, put your hands on the steering wheel for me. Is this your car?
Yes, it is.
Who's this in the car with you?
This is my daughter, Emma.
Alrighty. You know what, hang tight. I'm just going to actually check this out and then you'll be on your way, all right?
Okay, thanks.
I'm going to run it.
I don't know what to do.
How long can it take to check?
I don't know. Come on. All right, hopefully
Frank
it's just this
David.
ticket and we'll get on our way. It'll be quick and I can probably still get to work at 3.
Do me a favor, put your hands back on the steering wheel for me. I'm going to need you to go ahead and step out of the car for me, okay?
Why?
Go ahead and
Why?
step out and come with me. I'll explain it to you. I
What
just
is-
need you to step out. Go ahead and walk back here with me.
It's okay. What's
Walk
wrong?
back here with me. Come here. Go ahead and step back here. Let me talk to you.
It
for a
was
minute.
just a ticket. Where's
I
my license?
understand. It's in my car. Just walk back here with me, and I'll tell you about it. Go ahead
I
and
don't
stand
understand.
right here.
I don't-
Stand
it was
right
just
here.
a s-
Put your hands behind your back. Put your palms together.
Why?
Like
I
you're
didn't do
praying.
anything. It was just a
Interlace
s-
your fingers. We can sing together. We can't talk together.
My daughter is in the
Spread
car.
your
I
legs
don't
for me.
appreciate this and I
Spread
need
them
to
out.
know what's going on.
Spread your legs for me. Calm down. Spread your legs out. Point your feet out, and turn to the left.
What? I don't understand what this is about. It was just a stoplight.
Turn your head to the
I
left
have
for
to
me.
be at
Turn
work
your
at
head
3
to the
o'clock
left
and
for
I
me.
have-
Are you listening to me, Nicole?
Yes, I'm
okay,
trying
if you're
to listen.
listening, then pay attention to what I'm saying.
I have a baby that needs to be
You have
picked up
anything
right
on
now
you
and I
that's
have
gonna
to be
stick
at
me?
work at 3
Turn your
o'clock.
head to the left, to the right.
There you go.
Turn your head to the right. Keep it that way.
There's nothing on me. Does this have to do with Eric? Is this my ex-husband?
Exactly. You already know about it. Put your palms together.
I cannot leave right now. This is not a good time. Do you understand? My
Where's
baby
your other
is waiting
baby?
for me.
Okay, you know what? I can't help you with your kids until you
What
listen
am I
to me.
supposed to do? My daughter's in the car.
Go ahead and walk over here.
What are you going to do?
Nicole.
I can't. Is she coming with me? She
Nicole,
can't come with
calm down, Nicole. Just stay right there. Go ahead and have a seat in the back.
What about my daughter? She's in the car.
Okay, calm down. Put your head there.
And my baby. What
Listen
about
to
my
me.
baby?
Listen to me. Nicole, if you're really concerned about your kids,
Yes.
then we can actually get some help or make sure that they're safe, but I need to know if there's somebody who can come and get
There's
them.
nobody. I just moved here.
How long have you lived here?
I've only been here a few months.
And
There's
you-
no one. I don't have anybody.
Okay, we're gonna make sure that your kids are okay. They're gonna be safe, okay? Just hang tight. Yeah, she's got a felony warrant for an assault apparently on her ex, by her own admission. And she was on her way to a daycare center to get a small baby. And I'm assuming this is her daughter. So,
Yeah. Okay. Let me get her out. Let me get her out real quick.
all right.
Hi, sweetie. You said your name is Emma, right?
Emma, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead and step out of the car for me, please, Emma. How old are you, Emma?
12.
12. Okay. Just go over here and stand right by my partner.
What's going on?
We'll explain everything to you in just a minute. Right now, we're going to have to take your mom down to the station.
Why?
And
What's this
ask her some
about?
questions. I need you to sit tight while we decide what we're going to do. I think we're going to have Children Welfare Services come pick
I
you
just
up.
want to go with my mom.
Okay. All right. I understand. Just do us a favor and just relax for a minute, okay? We're going to have to see if we can't get Children Welfare Services out here. See if they can come out here, see what...
Probably so. She says she just moved here a month ago. You just moved here a month ago? And
Yeah,
she says she has no family here.
She's got another child.
She has another baby. She was on her way to a daycare center to pick the baby up.
Let me call them real quick.
Okay. It's going to be fine. We just need to actually talk to your mom and ask her some questions. You'll get a chance to talk to her. Okay?
What's going to happen to my brother?
We're going to actually get something for him and picking him up too.
Okay.
All right?
Hello. Hi, yeah, this is Deputy Smith with River County. Yeah, we have a minor at an arrest scene and need somebody to respond. Okay. Okay. Yeah, well, no, then we'll just have them meet us at the station then. Okay. And your name is? Okay. Thank you very much.
You're going to be fine.
All right. They're talking about hour and a half easy. So,
And you just want to transport her and tow this? Or?
well, it's not really a good idea to transport her in the back of the patrol car.
Okay, well,
How do you want to handle it?
What we can do is just get another unit.
Okay.
Another unit to come out.
I'll call for backup and I'll get a tow rolling for this one.
Okay.
Alrighty.
All right. Okay. Emma, right? I'm sorry, I don't want to get your name right. Okay. Mom has to go to the station for a little bit. All right. She's got to talk to our detectives and everything. And we're going to take care of you. Mom will be fine. She's going to be nice and safe. Child Welfare Services are going to come down and we'll make sure that they get your brother as well. We got a nice little room set up at the station for you guys so you guys can be not far from Mom. Okay? All right?
Yeah, I just want to stay with my mom.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to have another car come and pick you up. All right? And we're going to go ahead and take her down there so they can start talking to her now. Okay?
Okay.
You got any questions?
I don't.
No? Okay. If you have any questions, just ask me and everything will be fine. All right? You're going to be okay. All right?
The wonderful thing about this scenario is it shows the mindfulness of people being involved and paying attention to the needs of children. So they're thinking about what is the best possible option, and that option isn't available. So they come to some agreement about what else it can do.
What we see there is a great way to handle a bad situation. You know, the mother has nobody to turn to be able to take care of her kids. We see the interaction and the benefit of the relationship with CWS because they'll be able to handle picking up one of the kids. We also see the importance of communicating with the child that's there, what's happening. Let them know. I mean, kids are kids. They know, they see everything, hear everything. You're not going to be able to shield them from too much. But if you explain it to them and let them know what's happening, what's going to happen, they'll be put at ease. They'll be able to deal with it more readily.
Santa Clara County has adopted a formal protocol for all arrests where children are present, and it's called Joint Response.
What we have in Santa Clara County is called our Joint Response Protocol. And what that means now is that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, when law enforcement is in the field and they encounter a situation where children are either found to be at risk or parents are being arrested, so the placement of those children is in question, our social workers respond at any time of the night or day, every day of the week, including holidays. And we go out and together we meet up with those officers at the scene and talk about what's going on, look at both sets of data. They have different information. Theirs is criminal, ours is about child abuse, and we put all of that together and make the best decision for the children at that time.
In Santa Clara County, we have the good fortune of having a 100% rollout in all 13 jurisdictions of our Joint Response Program. That involves a 30-minute response time when we are called, literally. We do that by having placards that allow our social workers to go in commuter lanes during rush hours. We're a large county that gives us the ability to have a 30-minute response time. The officers in the field will actually call dispatch, and dispatch will call this designated line. They don't have to wait in line with anyone else who's calling in. This is all part of creating an infrastructure that has allowed us to have a very short response time for police to feel confident that when they call us, we will be there. And we are there always. In Santa Clara County, when we rolled out Joint Response, we did so by having our social workers, our law enforcement liaison in particular, go to each jurisdiction and personally train the officers. It allowed them to see us as social workers, see what we do, learn how we can help them, and to integrate the services we provide into their jobs.
We show up at the scene knowing that our CPS worker will be there when we call them. And they are almost 99% of the time that they're always there. And knowing that the resource that you have will be there for you, make your work a lot easier.
They welcome the help that we can give them. They don't do child abuse every day. We welcome the help that they give us because we don't know how to stabilize scenes like they do. So we find that we bring the best of what each of us has to the table.
And the initial reaction is one of concern that we're going to be relying on people who are not first responders, not emergency service personnel, to respond to the scene before we can finish what we're doing. And of course, the initial reaction is, my gosh, I can do this much faster myself without waiting for someone else to show up. And I think that was probably the greatest concern for people when it first came into our program, isn't so much how we're going to interact with them when they arrive. The question is, my gosh, when are they going to get there? Now that we've been at it for a few years, it's becoming a natural part of how the officers deal with incidents involving children when we're arresting their parents. And as such, the officers are aware that they need to get it started early, because the earlier they recognize the need and the earlier they call for that assistance, the more likely that it's going to arrive in a timely fashion. And once we've gotten over that hitch, it becomes actually a very useful asset that people are willing to apply with great ease. Most of them are using it as a regular part of how they deal with it now, and it's become as commonplace to dealing with children as an arrest with somebody who has a car and you're making a decision whether or not to call a tow truck.
We also thought that in San Jose, they had an innovative approach where they involved the community-based organizations. That is, organizations that had a nonprofit status. They were looking at the best interests of individuals.
I think that our implementation of this program in the city of San Jose has been very successful. And it's particularly in that we've been at it for a few years now, and we've got the bumps worked out, and we are just essentially just in that benefit phase now where we're using it and it's working well and we're not struggling with it anymore.
Now let's move to San Francisco and their approach.
In San Francisco, our procedure recognizes the parent has the primary responsibility for designating placement and a caregiver for that child. Because there is an arrest, because the parent is going to be absent for a period of time, our fallback position is to ask the parent for who they would want their child left with. We obviously are going to make sure that that's a safe placement, and we make that decision in conjunction with Child Protective Services. We don't necessarily have a joint response to the scene of an arrest, but we try to, instead of creating an additional level of bureaucracy, we try to expedite the amount of time the officers and the children are going to be at a scene, and we do that by making phone calls. We have a 20-minute response to our phone calls to exchange information with Child Protective Services. Our goal is to have that happen within 20 minutes.
San Francisco County has taken the community-based organizational approach another step. Instead of involving CPS with the intervention at the time of arrest, San Francisco County's welfare department involves the community-based organizations who are well suited to provide the public services, the health care services, the child care services for that individual.
The partnership in San Francisco with Child Protective Services and Child Welfare Services is working very well, in large part because we developed the relationship before we developed the protocol. And if I could give a single bit of advice to any agency that's looking to implement policy, it would be to develop those relationships and to anticipate there's a learning curve both for the social workers involved and for the law enforcement officers involved. Our public roles are very different, but our goals in protecting children in any situation are actually very similar.
In Los Angeles County, law enforcement and social workers have already established a good working relationship.
We work with the Los Angeles Police Department, we work with the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, and we work with 46 independent police agencies, and the relationship is respectful. It is a relationship in progress, and it's a relationship that we have recognized as being a important and a priority relationship.
You know, a few years ago we started with city attorneys being assigned to each station as neighborhood prosecutors and doing what we call vertical prosecution of cases, quality of life issues, vandalisms, transients, those kinds of things impacting neighborhoods. We then did outreach with the probation department for them to come and if not co-locate with us at every station, to at least work with an assigned station and work with our gang units, work with our patrol units to be able to impact immediately the suspects out in the street that are causing the havoc and being able to do something about it. The natural transition from that was with us, Children Welfare Services, being able to co-locate in our stations. We're now almost to the point where we've got a CWS worker in each station. And what that does is not only strengthen the relationship and the bond, but for a patrol cop who sees a CWS worker day in and day out in their station, talks to them, finds out how they do and what they can do for them out in the field is tremendous.
Is when you're going to go to do a warrant, who do you tell? That's confidential information. We want to keep that closed. We don't want anybody to know we're going there. The whole element is surprise. Well, we had to open that up a little bit. We had to tell that children's service worker, I'm going to go to this house tomorrow morning. And what we found is a couple of things that benefited us and benefited children's services. When we've told them, we've oftentimes been told, that's a foster home. Or that's a home where we have a case where children are. Things we may not have known. We don't know people are foster parents. This sort of explains some things to us. Also for them, it gave them more information on problems that we were dealing with that they may not have otherwise come across. Now they can provide a service to the family.
And the relationship that we currently have is that relationship of a partnership. They train us and we train them. And we're beginning to adopt their jargon as they're beginning to adopt ours. And so truly the definition of partner is not only exclusive to law enforcement any longer, but they're looking to us to work with us and consult and respond.
And that relationship now it's just become our normal way of doing business. And it's been extremely effective. And when people come on board, the new guys, and they know what we're doing, and the old timers are just telling them this is how we do it, it's become the standard.
In LA County, I think it's been very successful, especially dealing with the large number of people and children that we deal with in LA County, just by having children's services there to help us with so many children. We've had a huge success.
As agencies throughout California respond to this mandate, there are additional recommendations for agencies that include endorsement by the agency leadership, the creation of an oversight committee for each agency, and data collection for self-assessment and cost analysis.
This law we look at it's a guideline for all of us. It's a new procedure. It's something that's going to take place throughout California. But in Los Angeles County, we're certainly different. You know, we're 10 million people plus, we're a lot of agencies, and our agency alone is a large agency, and we patrol an area of about 3 million people. So what we're going to do is, and we've been doing it all along, is we have policy writers on our department, and we've met with them, child abuse experts, met with them, and also what we're doing is meeting with children's services. We have to establish our LA County protocol. So when we all leave here and law enforcement takes this, you need to get together with your own counties as how are we going to do this? How are we going to meet the mandate of this? And why not even take it further? This is a guideline, and even though it's somewhat of a mandate, it's telling us we need to go in this direction. So we're taking this back with Children's Services, and we're broadening that partnership that we've had all along. And we're going to establish a protocol and a commitment that we're going to depend on each other to resolve this. And we have the full endorsement of law enforcement in LA County. We have the full endorsement of Children's Services. What we have to do is now application. We have to apply it. And we've established our own subcommittee outside of the state that's going to be working together to establish policy, protocol, and then we're going to have to test it. Who's to say we're doing a good job? The results, we may get different results. We'll have immediate results because we'll measure, compared to today, how many kids are we impacting? When we record the fact that we've left children with a neighbor, a relative, or Children's Services has taken the child, we'll record that. We'll know how many kids that impacts. Then the other part of that is, does Children's Services now have a long-term case? Is that kid back in the system later on? This all has to be recorded anyway. So what we would like to do is to come back and say, what effect has this had? You know, we go back to 2007 and then we go into 2008 and we keep going and we start measuring levels from year to year. How many kids did it impact And are those kids impacted? How many kids are we seeing in the system later on? Hopefully the tide will turn and we'll see fewer kids in the system. Because we know we do a good job. Sometimes we speak to what isn't done well, and it's just not that big. Things are done very well. This is just raising that bar. We need 100% compliance 100% of the time. Because it's the one case you don't do that makes the news.
For a successful program, it's recommended that child welfare workers be co-located at law enforcement agencies to help build relationships. It's recommended to have a designated liaison officer to handle complaints and questions, and cross-training is also recommended to help understand the objectives of both professional groups. In this segment, we'll cover the many benefits that come from the partnership between law enforcement and child welfare services. As a young child, Ventura County Sheriff Bob Brooks had a positive contact with law enforcement that had a lasting impact.
My parents were never arrested, thankfully. I was never traumatized, never victimized as a child. But when I was about 12 years old, my grandfather was sent home to die. He had terminal cancer, he didn't want to die in a hospital, and my mother became his caregiver. We watched him decline. He was very, very close to me. My father was a first-generation immigrant working hard to establish himself in this country. So it was my grandfather that would take me fishing and take me on vacations. We developed a very close bond. And as I watched the inevitable, it was still traumatic when it happened. And 2 investigators were sent to the scene. One was occupied with my parents, taking care of the reports and collecting information as he should. And the other took me aside and spent time with me, talked to me, basically was a friend when I needed a friend. Was asking me about my future, keeping me distracted so I didn't have to deal with the unpleasantries that were going on around me. And I never forgot that act of kindness. Several years later, when I started dating my future wife, that investigator happened to be a neighbor. He continued the friendship over those years, and after I was married and laid off from a job, he came over and asked if I was interested in applying for a deputy sheriff's position with our department. Later, still, his son was my TAC officer and background investigator. And we established a lifelong friendship. He's no longer with us, but I owe him an eternal debt of gratitude. And so as we talk about our responsibility and all the mechanics and protocols that are involved, I don't want us to ever forget the human element. The greatest gift that we can do, and sometimes the most effective thing that we can do in terms of performing our job, is to give a child in a difficult situation the gift of empathy and understanding and compassion.
I think our end goal with this is going to be to have it become so commonplace throughout the state and in any particular county that when officers are dealing with arrests, when they've arrested the parents and the children aren't victims of anything, that they're going to immediately think, okay, how can I get CWS involved to help me decide the disposition of these children in the safest and most logical manner?
Sir, please turn around and put your hands on your head.
This is entirely unnecessary.
Sir, turn around and put your hands on your head.
Chuck, I don't understand what's going on. This is a little extreme, officer.
I'm going to ask you, please relax. Thank you.
Chuck, I don't understand what's going on. This is a little extreme, don't you think, officer?
This isn't necessary. I'm not going anywhere.
It's okay, Colin. I don't know what's going on.
It's going to be all right, Colin. Just wait for a moment. It's a huge, massive mistake.
We're going to need to take you to the station to ask you some questions. Is there anybody that you can call to watch your son, please?
Colin can come with us. It's fine.
No, he actually can't. Can you call a neighbor or a family member?
Call Janae. She'd come down when she's home. It's going to be all right, Colin.
Hi, Janae. Hi, it's Megan. Hi, can you come down, please? I'll tell you when you get here. Thanks. Bye.
She coming?
Yeah.
All right.
Is she your neighbor, ma'am?
Yeah. How long is this going to take? How long will we be there?
It's only going to be a few minutes. The sooner we get started, the sooner we're done.
And we can't do this here? I don't understand why we have to. Come on in, Janae. God, what's going on? What's happening?
There's a big mistake here, Janae. I'm sorry we're bringing you into this, but it's going to be squared away.
Can you take their son to the other room, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know.
Ma'am, I'm going to need you to stand up for me, please. Turn around.
You don't have to
turn away from me.
You don't have to do this to her for.
Palms together. Just relax.
Chuck, you said nothing
Don't start now. Don't. Not now.
Relax
Not
now.
now. Don't start. Oh, for crying out loud.
Sit down here and have a seat.
Colin, honey, it's okay, baby.
Partner, before we leave this child with this woman, I want to do a background check.
Okay, I'll call CWS.
Ma'am, could you spell your first and last name for me, please?
Yes, it's Janae, Janae Wilder, Wilder.
May I have your date of birth, please?
Yes, it's 5/7/71.
Thank you.
Child Welfare Services, this is Pej. Can I help you?
Hi, this is Officer Vargas from River City Police.
Hey, Officer Vargas, what can I do for you?
Hi, can you run a name for me, please, and check for priors?
Certainly. What's the name?
Janae Wilder.
Sure. Can you spell Janae?
Janae.
Last name?
Last name is Wilder, Wilder.
And the date of birth?
5/7/71.
1 second.
Janae Wilder comes back, no wants, no warrants.
There is no child welfare history.
Thank you for checking.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
She's got no priors with CWS.
She comes back clean.
Oh, that's a shocker.
Sir, let's come with me, sir, please.
Sam, let's go to the station, please. Stand up.
Colin, just hang in there, okay, buddy?
Janae, I'll call you as soon as I can. I don't know what is going on. Colin, I love you, honey.
If there had been the opportunity to run the sort of check that we're talking about, that's possible when you have both the social worker and the law enforcement officer working together, they can both check their information systems, their data systems to make sure no criminal record, no history of child abuse or neglect, then there's a level of confidence that you can leave the child with the neighbor and the child will be safe.
There are many benefits to this partnership between law enforcement and child welfare services. It reduces traumatic effects on children, crime reduction, increases officer safety, reduces officer and department liability, diffuses volatile situations, reduces officers' time at the scene of an arrest, reduces the number of children placed in protective custody, saves money for the county with fewer children placed in shelters. It clarifies responsibilities for law enforcement and child welfare services, and it creates goodwill between law enforcement and the community.
Some of the benefits that we as officers will see is, number one, liability. We will not accrue liability as we would in the event that we left the child alone and, for instance, if something happened to the child. With regards to officer safety, if the subject that we're arresting sees that we actually care about them and sees that we care about the children, my personal belief is that they would be less likely to maybe fight with us in the station or try to escape because they realize that we're human and we care.
The benefit to officers is that they can walk away from a situation knowing that they did their very best to work with social workers, to look at what this family might need, and to make sure that these kids are taken care of.
I think for police officers, they welcome having another party there who can bring some expertise about children and child development and family assessment. And I think on a more practical level, police officers are really busy and they have multiple events that are probably lining up waiting for them. So it allows them to make more quick, effective decisions and then be put back into service more quickly so they can move on to the next scene.
These kids are the most at-risk kids that we know of. They're much more likely to end up in jail themselves. They're more likely to not do well in school. These are the kinds of things that the officer can have an impact on. Hopefully these kids could go off in a different trajectory. And this makes a huge difference in the community because the kids are the community's future.
Will benefit not only law enforcement because they're better informed and child welfare people because they're involved in the process, but also the parent of that child because they get one more chance to get reunited and they don't want to be separated from their child. And the worst thing that can happen to a parent is to lose that child. At the same time, the child doesn't become institutionalized. And so the child has an opportunity to have a normal life at best they can, given the fact that their parents are no longer with them.
And deputies are starting to see these kids taken care of. They're starting to notice the kids that they didn't before. They appreciate children's services, helping them. They don't have to, wait 4 hours in a house for somebody to respond. And I don't know that it could work out a whole lot better than it is. We still have some ways to go. And now what we're looking at is when we don't have a crime, maybe there's still a service to provide for the family. And if we make an arrest, maybe we don't find drugs or maybe we don't find guns, but we could still see the children and make sure that their safety is one of the issues that we're going to be concerned about before we leave. So that partnership that actually is related to endangerment of the child or neglect, with this, we're going to take it a step further and make sure that kid's safety is paramount to us. So when we leave, we're going to feel pretty good about how we've handled that, how we've resolved it.
We've reached the end of our telecourse. I'm Mark Bailey, and on behalf of the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training, I'd like to thank you for your participation. Now, let's listen to the final thoughts from our subject matter experts.
We get called when everything else has gone wrong. When we're there, we're there to fix the mess. And one of the things, especially in this area, when we have kids involved and we're taking the parents away to jail, we need to shift that a little bit and look upon ourselves, I think maybe as a gateway to hope for these kids. That there's hope that even though their world as they know it is changing radically, that there's still a little bit of hope because of this relationship, the partnerships, because of the services that we can provide to these kids to make sure that they're taken care of. But the way we handle that situation with the kids who are, looking like the proverbial deer in the headlights and not knowing what's going to happen, the way we handle that right there, right then, will make the whole difference to that kid.
And it's important for us to remember that may be that child's one contact with a law enforcement officer. And I think we owe it to the children, I think we owe it to the citizens, and we owe it to society to make that as positive as possible.
We all, as officers, you went through that hiring process. What's that question they ask you? Why do you want to be an officer? And everyone put out there, I want to help my community. Well, if that's true, children are in your community. So you're not just helping by taking the bad guy off the street. Some child might be out there that needs your help too.
The most important thing that I learned from talking to dozens of children who'd experienced the arrest of a parent is that they are just like my children and your children. Their connection with their parent, whether or not that parent has broken the law, is as intense and as real as our children's connection to us. Their fear and grief when their parent is taken is just the same as what our children would feel, and our responsibility to take care of those kids is just as real as our responsibility to our own children.
This is establishing a new normal for law enforcement, a standard that says there's also a child in the house, and my job's not done, with the arrest by itself. It's not done. I have to provide for the safety of that child. I have to leave here knowing that child is left safe.
But the one thing I hope that comes out of this whole process is that the law enforcement will ask the question, do you have children? If they ask the question, the whole process starts, and what we've been working on comes into play. The guidelines, the procedures all come into play. If you don't ask the question, you don't know what's going on. You don't know if there's children in there, you don't know if they have children.
3 years later, when I was 14, I had a totally different experience with the police, which, really changed my view on them. Like a lot of other kids my age around that time, I don't know if I hated police, but I sure as hell didn't trust them. And it's kind of sad because those are authority figures that are supposed to protect you. It would be really nice to be able to trust those people. But being overlooked in the previous event when I was 11 and multiple events when my father had been arrested, and not being explained anything to, not being treated like another person, not being spoken to by the police that are arresting my father, really made me not like him and not trust him. So the neighbors called the police, and 2 patrol cars came, and both my parents were arrested. I looked out the window. They were being put into cars, and both patrol cars drove away. And that was that. I was really confused. But then another patrol car showed up, and the police got out, and they started speaking to me. And I was 14 years old this time, and they treated me like another person. I mean, more so than that, they treated me like another adult. They treated me like an equal. Having the police, explain it to me and actually speak to me like I'm an equal and let me know what my parents did, why it was wrong, why they need to be arrested. They really broke it down for me. And, I don't know if they have to do that, but I really appreciate it because they took their time to explain to me how long each of my parents would be gone, where they were going. Well, I could tell that they were genuinely trying to make me feel, safe and secure despite the, pretty traumatic event that just happened. And another thing is they told me I needed to call up another adult so that we could be taken so we wouldn't get left alone at the house. Because that had, it's not something that just happens in the movies. That had actually happened. We had been left at home alone. They actually waited there until my aunt got there to pick us up. I called my aunt and they waited for her to pick us up. And he pulled me aside again just to make sure I was all right, like everything was all right up there and that I was feeling okay. He was like, don't worry about it. Bad things happen to a lot of people, but everything's going to be all right. You just need to keep a positive outlook on life and everything will be all right. And it's not in the job description. They don't have to do that, but that's in the human description. That's what people are supposed to do to each other.